It's no secret that humans are the Earth's most dominant species. And without proof of life anywhere else in the universe, we can probably consider ourselves the most dominant species in space, too. But what if there were others, just like us, millions of years ago? How do we even know that we're the first advanced civilization to call the planet Earth home? And if there have been others, what kind of traces have they left for us to find? This is What If, and here's what would happen if an advanced civilization had already existed on Earth. We know that complex life has existed on Earth for about 400 million years. But how could we look that far back? Ancient ruins and artifacts only take us back a few thousand years. Geologic records only about 2 million. So, if we can't rely on direct evidence, then where else could we find traces of a potentially extinct civilization? And what can we learn to make sure we avoid the same fate? Here are some numbers to make your brain hurt for a second. The universe is about 13.8 billion years old. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. And humans have only developed our industrial civilization in the last 300 years. With all that in mind, it seems like there was ample opportunity for another advanced civilization to emerge, flourish, and die, all before we even showed up. But finding any proof of a past civilized species seems like it could be harder than even starting the civilization itself. Physical artifacts would be the most concrete evidence of past intelligent life, but it's not very likely that we'll ever find any. Over time, even our tallest buildings will crumble, and our strongest materials will disintegrate. Our cities cover less than 1% of the Earth's surface, so any comparable cities from past civilizations would be easy for paleontologists to miss. Even if we knew where to look, it's unlikely that these artifacts would last any longer than a few million years. Sure, there's always fossilization, but it only provides a limited record of the past. Due to variables like when they lived and where, an industrial civilization that lasted 100,000 years, that's over 300 times longer than us, they might leave no fossil trace at all. So maybe we're better off looking for more indirect evidence. The best way to find that would be to look at what traces our own civilization would leave behind if it collapsed in its current state. One place we're leaving a clear trail is in the sediment at the bottom of our bodies of water. One look at this stuff and you would immediately see the wacky chemical balances that would imply some sort of outside influence. For instance, the nitrogen fertilizers that we use to grow food are running off into our bodies of water and producing low oxygen dead zones that would be visible in sedimentary layers. On top of that, we'll be leaving long-lasting synthetic molecules from radioactive fallout, steroids, and all the plastic we dump in the ocean. So yeah, future species are going to have a great impression of us. In case we're not embarrassed enough, our technological advances are rapidly changing the environment, which has brought on widespread extinctions that would be visible at fossil records. Ironically, perhaps the most promising marker of an advanced civilization could be one of the very things that brought on its downfall. When we burn fossil fuels, we are releasing carbon back into the air. Fossil fuels ultimately derive from decayed plants and animals, which contain a variety of carbon that has a different atomic mass than most carbon in our atmosphere. When this kind is released, it changes the molecular makeup of the atmosphere and leaves a clear signal to future scientists. In a 2018 study, scientists hypothesized that civilizations could even have fossil fuel-driven life cycles. When fossil fuel use leads to climate change, the oxygen levels decrease in the ocean and help create a breeding ground for new fuels like oil and coal. In this way, a civilization and its demise might sow the seed for new civilizations in the future. In our search for intelligent neighbors from the past, we may never actually find any evidence, but we can learn a lot about ourselves. Analyzing our own long-term ecological footprint can have practical benefits. It helps us recognize where we can do better to achieve a balance with our planet so that we don't become the forgotten civilization of tomorrow. While it doesn't seem likely that intelligent life was here before us, that doesn't mean there wasn't any. For all we know, they were so advanced they were able to clean up their mess as they went. The only verifiable way to check if someone was here before us might be to rev up a time machine and go see for yourself.
The Amazon rainforest stretches for millions of kilometers, hiding ancient tribes, animals, and maybe something else. What if, under this mysterious canopy, lies an advanced civilization? How could we miss something so huge? Is the rainforest just an overgrown garden? And why didn't these people fight off the European conquest? This is What If, And here's what would happen if an advanced civilization lived in the Amazon. In the 1500s, Spanish explorer Francisco de Orellana returned from the Amazon with wild tales of a golden city called El Dorado and warrior women in the jungle. But when others searched for treasure and glory, they all came back with nothing. So what the heck? Did de Orellana make it all up? Well, for the next few centuries, that's what we thought. But now, thanks to technology, it looks like this explorer wasn't lying. Using sophisticated aerial sensors, researchers created a 3D image of the ground under the rainforest, revealing a hidden ancient city. That flies in the face of everything we thought we knew about the Amazon, but what if these people still lived among us? The Amazon is the size of India, and much of it lies beyond our reach. Without this technology, we might never have seen what lies beneath the ground. So, what else did we learn? Humans flourished in the Amazon basin for almost 10,000 years. And they weren't living in tiny mud huts like you may have seen in movies. These sprawling cities could have held nearly 1 million people in their prime. And if these complex, sophisticated people lived today, the history of the world would be radically different. The Amazon belonged to the Kasarabi people. And they didn't just adapt to the jungle, they might have created it. Well, that's the theory anyway. Researchers think that this society built garden cities around the plant life they selected. Throughout the area, the Brazil nut tree dominates the land. Is that a coincidence? Or is this how the Kasarabi fed their people? Still not convinced? Well, the soil found in the Amazon contains nutrients not found anywhere else on Earth. Called terra preta, this dirt contains microbes that fertilize barren land, but while we think humans created this, we still don't know exactly how. Okay, well, so what do we know? Those images showed us they built villages in geometric patterns. They clustered small communities around larger ones. Roads connected these settlements, and they even constructed waterways. Waterways that could have controlled seasonal floodings to grow crops and farm fish. These intricate Amazon cities are older than anything the ancient Greeks built, but what else did researchers find? Well, for one, it looks like these lost cities aligned with the stars. This means these builders had advanced knowledge of astronomy. The Kasarabi built a civilization that rivaled anything on Earth at the time. So, what happened to them? Well, we still don't know, but remember, these people depended on floodwaters for almost everything. If water became scarce during a drought, much of their civilization could have died out. And whatever happened, they were gone for 100 years before the Spanish arrived. Just enough time for the jungle to reclaim their once great society. But if the Kasarabi survived, they could have grown even more advanced, learning more about math, science, and astronomy. They might have even fought off the European conquest of South America. Masters of the land, these experienced jungle warriors could have created alliances with other cultures like the Aztecs or Incas. This army might have changed the face of history as we know it. And if the invaders and the Kasarabi called a truce, maybe the two societies could have traded knowledge. The people of the Amazon could have integrated European transportation methods and weaponry into their everyday lives. While diseases like smallpox would still have been devastating, they might have developed medicines or immunity to fight it off. More importantly, all the minerals and precious materials hidden in South America would have remained in South America. And Spanish wouldn't be the third most spoken language on the planet because these citizens would proudly speak in their native tongue. The nations we know now could be completely different, united under an Amazonia culture. But hey, that could still happen now. Like, what if South America became one country?
Millions of years ago, humans were near the bottom of the food chain. Predators, weather, and diseases all posed the threat of wiping the species out. But then, thanks to evolution, humans went from huddling in dark caves to building full-blown cities. How did that happen? This mysterious era was a time when history wasn't officially recorded, but it brought on a ton of innovation that would be the building blocks of our world today. Let's hop in our time machine and take a trip back to the prehistoric era. Okay, first, what is this strange prehistoric era that you've ended up in? Well, this was a time in history when humans began to develop the world we have today. It was comprised of three main ages: the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. The names of these ages reflected the primary materials that humans were using to make their tools. But these materials also provided so much more than simple instruments. They inspired an entirely new society and helped humans evolve into the new world. Let's check it out. The Stone Age. The Stone Age comprised three main eras: the Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic periods. The Stone Age began over 3 million years ago, and this was one of the most critical ages for humans and our evolution. One of the most significant advancements of this time was the creation of stone tools. Early humans began making and using tools from rocks and other raw materials around them. One of their tools was sharp pebbles that were used to cut and sharpen other materials. They were essentially just sharpened rocks that humans would hold to make more complex and useful tools. After humans mastered this, they moved on to sharpening other stones used for chopping. These could be used to cut wood or help prepare food. Next, their most complex tool, the hand axe. These were made using multiple techniques. First, you needed to form the rock using a hard hammer technique. Once that's done, you'd refine the thin edge using a soft hammer technique. Today, these tools seem incredibly simple, and you could make them yourself just by looking at them. But millions of years ago, these tools required a detailed understanding of how stone works and how it behaves under certain circumstances. Yeah, this again sounds really simple, but by figuring this out in the Stone Age, humans proved they'd made a significant leap in brain function and problem solving. Another major innovation during this time was harnessing fire. Fire provided shelter, warmth, and protection for humans, allowing them to begin their journey to the top of the food chain. After millions of years of humans playing around with their newly discovered tools, they were able to become much more than just a hunting and gathering society. This is where farming came into play. Humans in the Mesolithic period began experimenting with planting food. As the climate changed, it became easier to grow their own plants in the soil, and more types of food became available. Farming also brought the domestication of animals. Goats, pigs, and cattle all had benefits for humans. They could be used for food, clothing, even labor. Now, once farming and domestication started to take off, well, it brought a shift in settlement patterns. Instead of nomadic humans moving from cave to cave, they were able to start building more permanent homes. Humans in the final period of the Stone Age, the Neolithic period, built on top of these inventions. Instead of just experimenting with seeds, humans began to learn agricultural techniques and
were able to plant enough crops to feed their settlements. This period brought new tools and technology and a completely different social structure. With more food and permanent settlements, the population boomed. This led to a division of labor, political structures, and more. The Bronze Age. From 3300 to 1200 BCE was the Bronze Age. One of the key factors of this age was humans discovering how to use metals like copper, tin, and of course bronze in their tools. With these materials, they made more advanced instruments and weapons, ones that would last longer and could be more intricate since metal is more malleable than stone. This also opened the door for artisans and experts to begin working with bronze. They created art that was sought after and influenced culture. Weapons and armor made of bronze impacted how war was conducted at the time. But bronze materials weren't the only new kids on the block. The wheel was invented. This made it easier to move people and supplies. Trade routes between settlements were created. Different settlements could share or sell resources amongst each other, allowing civilization to progress even faster. This led the way for urbanization and the introduction of cities. Settlements in places like Egypt and Greece eventually grew to a point where the population was so big it required some sort of urban planning. This created cities. Society evolved further. Trade, administration, and writing were all starting to come into play. But all of this would have been impossible without food. During the Bronze Age, humanity started to develop enhanced knowledge of how crops worked. Humans began to understand what crops grew best, where, and during what seasons. The Iron Age. Around 1200 BCE, parts of Europe and the Middle East began making tools with iron. Now, this might sound like a small innovation, but this metal allowed society to make massive technological steps. Iron is much stronger and more durable than copper. This allowed humans to build better tools and weapons. Like, good luck if you were at war with your bronze armor and weapons and had to face an army with all iron gear. The societies with iron tools were the ones in power. Iron was also much easier to mine and more readily available than copper. This allowed humans to make more tools that were economically viable. And more tools means more food that can be harvested, more buildings that can be made, the opportunity for society to progress and flourish. Now, the process of making these tools also required significant innovation. Smelting iron and being able to forge and temper the material required huge technological jumps. But cities weren't limited to making just a few tools at a time. They were becoming production powerhouses. They could produce dozens or hundreds of tools whenever they needed. Ironworking was so popular that over the next couple hundred years, it expanded across the globe. From Scotland to Africa, societies began using iron and learning the methods of building tools. This allowed more cities and settlements to progress and prosper. Expanded trade routes helped with the progress. More cities and cultures could communicate with each other than never before. The creation of iron tools facilitated the need for different cities to trade and share resources. Another essential tool invented during this time was the iron plow. This allowed us to farm crops more efficiently than ever before, often creating a surplus of food. And of course, more food allowed populations to grow bigger, all thanks to these newfound tools. Around 550 BCE, the Iron Age gave way to the Age of Classical Antiquity, marked by the beginning of humans recording and documenting our own history. And the rest is, well, history. Literally. Imagine a time of scientific and mathematical innovation, magic, and fertile land irrigated by the great Nile River. Ancient Egypt was a successful and intelligent civilization that lasted for 3,000 years. What do you think your life would be like if you were an Egyptian during this time period? And let's pretend it's a good period. No droughts, locusts, plagues, or famine for you. What kind of food would you eat? How were women treated? And did slaves build the pyramids? This is What If, and here's what would happen if you lived in ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptians believed in strict social structures. Depending on the class or trade you were born into, your life would be vastly different. The hierarchical pyramid of social status and wealth was composed of slaves and servants, tenant farmers, specialists like sailors and soldiers, educational professionals, and finally, the elite. Who would you be? At the bottom of the social pyramid were slaves. They came from foreign lands but were not of a single race. And while they could negotiate their contracts, they were still bonded laborers and worked in exchange for food and shelter. At the very top of the pyramid was the ruler who reigned over everyone. There were 300 rulers throughout ancient Egypt's existence. While we call them pharaohs today, that wasn't their actual title in ancient Egypt. Rulers did not necessarily have to be men or Egyptian, but they were seen as divine liaisons between the gods and the people. Life would be drastically different depending on your gender. Like many ancient civilizations, Egypt had strict gender roles. But you still had the same legal rights. Women could own property and live alone if they chose to. However, marriage was seen as a social and economic necessity, no matter your gender. So, if you lived in ancient Egypt, you'd probably be married and have a brood of children. You would live in a house built of mud bricks with a stone oven and pits dug into the ground for food storage. If you were an elite family, then lucky you. As a nobleman or woman, you would be waited upon by your servants. After a breakfast of bread and fruit, the man of the house would take his chariot down to his estate on the banks of the Nile. After touring the grounds and maybe meeting with the estate overseer about the year's harvest, you might take a quick nap. Once you're rested, you would meet up with a friend to hunt wildfowl on your estate. At home, as a woman, you would spend the day supervising plans for a banquet. Before the banquet begins, you would adorn yourself with gold and semi-precious stones to further show your wealthy status. Now, you're ready to greet your guests as they arrive in chariots and litters, which were wheelless enclosures carried on the shoulders of servants. Nobleman or woman, you feast on geese, duck, fish, ox, and gazelle, followed by grapes, figs, dates, and melons. Once the party is over, you head to bed while your servants clean up. Life as a farmer is not nearly as grand. If you're a man, you spend the day working in the fields and tending to cattle or ducks. On tax day, you would pack up some of your harvest and bring it to the temple as payment for the land. If you're a woman, you spend the day grinding wheat, making bread, and raising children. For food, you mainly eat bread, beer, garlic, and, if you're fortunate, a little bit of meat. Maybe you're neither part of the elite or a farmer, but a pyramid builder. You wouldn't be a slave, but you would live a life of hard labor. You would be one of 10,000 devoted workers. Since it took 30 years to build one pyramid, you would probably work on the same monument for your entire life, which would be shorter than your fellow ancient Egyptians because of all that hard labor. At at least you get to eat meat regularly and get an honorable burial once you die. No matter your status, you would worship several thousand gods, and for fun, you would play board games such as Mehen or Senet to pass some free time. Overall, the quality of your life would drastically depend on your ruler and the time period. There were 3 periods of prosperity and 2 periods of instability during this civilization. Fear of famine caused by droughts or locusts was a constant threat. Imagine if we could control earthquakes and tsunamis to generate power. Or maybe even terraform every planet in the solar system. These are just a couple of the things that might happen if human civilization was to advance in the future. So, how can humans get to this point? What other advancements will happen? And what makes us think we'll even progress this far? This is What If, and here's what would happen if we became a Type 1 civilization. Global civilizations can be categorized into what's known as the Kardashev scale. This measures a civilization's ability to use all the energy available to it and is scaled from 1 to 3. Currently, humanity doesn't even reach Type 1 civilization. This is because humans don't use all the forms of energy on Earth. We use wood, coal, and oil, but there's a lot more. So, what would change if humanity evolved into one of these types of civilizations? Being a Type 1 civilization means we would have complete control over all the energy on Earth. This means that we'd say goodbye to fossil fuels since they're limited and unsustainable. Instead, we could use the wind, sunlight, and water for our energy needs. And since this energy is so accessible, you may no longer need to pay for your power bill. In a Type 1 civilization, we'd continuously be using energy. It would be as essential as oxygen. We would also start using natural disasters to our advantage. Tsunamis could be used to produce energy. And earthquakes could potentially be used to terraform parts of the world. With us having complete control over our planet's energy sources, we could also control the weather. If an area of the world were suffering through a drought, we could disperse rain clouds over it and bring it back to life. Humanity could also say goodbye to global warming, as we'd be able to bring the atmosphere back to carbon neutral and control our planet's temperatures. Casualties from natural disasters would also be reduced, as we'd be able to predict when and where they might happen. And not only that, but we'd be able to live on places on Earth we'd never have dreamed of before. Like in the water, as well as in climates that used to be unsuitable for us humans. Yep, living in a Type 1 civilization would be pretty great. But with things being this perfect, we might get a little bored. So what if we took humanity one step further and became a Type 2 civilization, or even a Type 3? A Type 2 civilization means we could harness the energy of the sun and use it not just on Earth, but throughout our solar system. We could use its power to travel to and terraform Mars, or even a planet like Neptune. Becoming a Type 3 civilization would allow us to use all the energy in the galaxy. And since the Kardashev scale was invented in the 1960s, scientists have come up with potential 4th and 5th types of civilizations. This is where things get a little tricky. Scientists aren't ready to fully define these as they're past our current understanding of physics. But it is safe to say that becoming either a Type 4 or Type 5 civilization means we could harness the energy of the entire universe and be able to travel it with ease. And becoming a Type 5 civilization means we'd all be practically gods. We could control and manipulate the universe in whichever way we please. There's no telling when we might evolve to these levels of civilization, but experts generally agree that humanity might be able to reach Type 1 in the next 100 years or so. But that's only assuming that humanity lives long enough in the first place. With global warming getting worse and worse, and humanity not taking the correct measures to stop it fast enough, there's no telling what might happen. Researchers have detected strange radio signals coming from deep space. These mysterious radio waves might just be bursts of cosmic energy from a distant neutron star. Or it could be that scientists have discovered a highly advanced civilization 90 light years away from Earth. So, what kind of civilization would have the ability to send strong signals like this? Well, scientists classify civilizations on something called the Kardashev scale. It's a scale that measures a civilization's technological ability to harness energy. While it's a hypothetical scale that could eventually have 5 or more levels, most scientists only refer to the first few. But don't be underwhelmed. We're the only civilization we know of, and technically, we're still stuck on Type 0. At this stage, we've managed to harness some, but not all of our planet's potential energy. We consume about 18 trillion watts of power every year, and if we wanted to bump ourselves up to a Type 1 civilization, we'd need to consume over 500 times that every second. To do this, we'd need to harness, store, and utilize all of the energy available to reach Earth. We'd also have to tame volcanoes, earthquakes, and other natural forces. At the rate at which we're developing now, it's possible that we could be a Type 1 civilization within the next 200 years. But whatever civilization scientists may have discovered in the far reaches of space could already be a Type 2 civilization, or higher. Once our civilization has all of the energy available on our home planet under control and we graduate to a Type 1 on the Kardashev scale, then we need to take the next step. Time to crank up our energy consumption to 10 billion times what it was before. To do this, we'd need to harness not just all the solar energy that reaches Earth, we'd need all of the energy our star generates, period. If there is a Type 2 civilization out there, they're probably using an incredible system to do this: a Dyson sphere. They'd build this megastructure around their star to collect all the energy it radiates out in every direction. They could even assemble other Dyson spheres around the first Dyson sphere to guarantee that little to no energy escapes. But there's nothing simple about this technology, and that's why only advanced civilizations could construct something like it. For one, a Dyson sphere must be larger than the star itself. And if these megastructures are bigger than stars, well, they should be easy to spot, right? Well, this could be tricky. Once a civilization is finished building the Dyson sphere, the megastructure blocks nearly all of the visible light from its star. A civilization this advanced could make its own solar system invisible. Lucky for us, visible light isn't the only way to detect a star. Even with a Dyson sphere blocking its light, a star would still radiate heat, and we could detect the star by the infrared light it gives off. But that wouldn't be the only way we might discover a civilization this advanced. Remember that strange radio signal? It originated about 90 light years away from Earth, coming from the star HD 164595. Was this powerful radio signal created by an alien race and intentionally pointed toward Earth? A civilization able to pull this off would need to be far more advanced than our own. This Type 2 civilization would be able to utilize the raw materials on every planet in its star system, and maybe even beyond. They may have built fusion reactors that orbit their planet, fueled with gas from other worlds with hydrogen-rich atmospheres. And they might be mining precious metals from rocky planets, just like Earth. They could terraform other planets into livable worlds for their populations, and they wouldn't live in fear of civilization-ending natural disasters like asteroid impacts, ice ages, or global warming because they'd have technical solutions for these too. This alien civilization would be at the stage on the Kardashev scale where they'd be able to master interstellar travel. But if that's true, there should be no reason for them not to pop by for a visit, right? Well, not so fast. With all the advanced technology they might have at their disposal, these aliens could be waiting for us to catch up. That way, when our civilizations meet, we would do so as equal partners. Who knows? They could be so advanced that they're no longer a fully biological race. They could be more like cyborgs with a mix of robotic and organic material. This would make them capable of incredible things that humans could only dream of. But they wouldn't stop there. An advanced world like this would want to go farther up the Kardashev scale, and as they became a Type 3 civilization, they'd rely on something other than the power of their own star system. They would harness the power of several stars in their galaxy. With this much power, a civilization would have no problem meeting its ever-growing energy needs. They'd just hook up another star when they needed more power. If we ever advanced to this level, we'd have 100 billion stars available to harness in the Milky Way galaxy alone. A civilization like this would no doubt be the rulers of their galaxy, and they'd have the power to move entire star systems, merging them to harvest the energy they need more efficiently. So if one of these civilizations existed, well, you could detect them by observing the sudden disappearance of many stars in a faraway galaxy. This could be a sign that Dyson spheres have been constructed around not just one, but several stars. A Type 3 civilization could already be out there. After all, scientists have announced that they've found 2 galaxies with a highly unusual amount of infrared light. This is something we usually observe in galaxies where new stars are being born, but some unusual and sudden spikes in infrared light could mean that we've found the first signs that civilizations many times more advanced than us exist. Maybe they're about to make contact. Or maybe they already have. It's the end of the world as you know it. Every human on Earth suddenly went extinct. And it's time for nature to make its ultimate comeback. What would happen to your home and your city? Why would this doom the planet to a nuclear meltdown? And would any trace of human existence manage to live on? This is What If, and here's what would happen if humans suddenly went extinct. Whether it was a global pandemic, a planet-wide volcanic event, or a gigantic space rock, we reached the end of the line for our species. Every single human on Earth is gone. For good. Now, while there's no hope for humanity to make a comeback, we'd be leaving behind a lot of stuff. Cities, highways, waste. Time to see just how long it would take for the last remaining traces of human life to disappear. The first week of life on Earth without humans would be tough for all the pets. Without you, your furry companions would need to get outside and find food for themselves. So hopefully you left a window open for them. Your peace lily would stand no chance. But that wouldn't be the only thing at stake with you gone for just 1 week. Soon, the world will become radioactive. The thing is, our nuclear plants produce nuclear waste. These pools of spent nuclear fuel need to be constantly cooled off with water. And that water needs electricity to circulate. Without humans to maintain the electrical infrastructure, soon nuclear facilities around the world would start losing power. And that would cause a disastrous chain reaction. The water that used to cool down nuclear waste would stop running and begin to boil off. This would expose nuclear waste, causing it to catch fire. All this waste would explode, covering the planet in deadly radioactive chemicals. Ecosystems around the world would start dying from all the radioactivity. And many of these chemicals would remain dangerous for 300 years. And some, like plutonium, would stay radioactive for the next 240,000 years. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Okay, about 1 year after we're gone, nature would begin to reclaim our roads and highways. Moss and fungus would grow everywhere. And when the first winter hit the planet, these roads would start to crumble. All the freezing and thawing would cause water from melted snow to flow into the cracks. In these cracked, vacant streets, new plants would grow. There would be weeds like mustard and shamrock. And in a few more years, grass. In forests poisoned by radiation, there wouldn't be any birds singing this year, but further away from these deadly areas, animal populations would start to boom. There wouldn't be any humans to hunt them or force them out of their natural homes anymore. Without pesticides, insects would reproduce quicker, taking over the globe. This would mean much more food for all kinds of animals, like reptiles and rodents. Okay, fast forwarding a bit, you'd start to see our empty cities undergo major changes. London's Trafalgar Square would be growing young trees. Berlin's Brandenburg Gate would be surrounded by forest. In New York City, a lot would be going on underground. Half a century would have gone by since the last time anyone from a maintenance crew managed any of its 753 subway pumps that prevented rainstorms from flooding the rails. There would now be a network of underground rivers below New York's concrete landscape. Steel columns supporting the streets above would buckle and create waterways through Park Avenue and Wall Street. Your abandoned house and your neighborhood would all be in pretty bad shape. Roofs would leak, nails would rust, buildings would start collapsing. In major cities, streets would be littered with glass falling from decaying skyscrapers. All those skyscrapers would crumple into massive piles of rubble. Despite the city being flooded, New York's Grand Central Station and other stone buildings like it would still be intact. And good news, I guess, all your now worthless money would still be safe and sound in bank vaults that would never be reopened. But famous works of art wouldn't be so lucky. Without climate control and electricity, museum vaults would be less fortunate. Water would leak in and mold would cover everything. Ironically, 1,000-year-old ceramics would continue to survive, just like fossils. 500 years later, a forest would now cover where your home once stood. But buried in the dirt could still be the remains of many of your aluminum appliances and stainless steel cookware. Sadly, you wouldn't be around to cook any good meals with them anymore. With every stretch of black asphalt now overtaken by trees and grasses, temperatures would drop all over the world. The atmosphere would undergo changes as it continues to recover. Without humans, there would be less carbon dioxide in it. The initial boom in animal populations from after our disappearance would stabilize by this point. Predators like wolves would once again roam around Europe hunting in packs. Jumping way ahead into the future, would anything remain of human civilization? Well, you'd still be able to make out the faces of former US presidents in the granite of Mount Rushmore, but don't expect many facial features. A lot of the rock would significantly erode. There would also be some remaining pieces of Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza and the Great Wall of China. But time wouldn't be kind to them, and both would be barely recognizable versions of the former world wonders. At this point, everything that humans left behind on Earth would be consumed by the sun as it expands and destroys the planet. But if you're worried about humanity disappearing into nothingness, well, there still could be a human footprint to be found. The Voyager space probes would be somewhere out beyond our solar system. Maybe some alien civilization would find them and learn that once upon a time, there was human life on Earth. Scientists have pieced together a pretty clear picture of what life was like on Earth thousands, even millions of years ago. But if you fast forward 1 million years from now, would alien civilization be doing the same to learn about us? What would Earth look like 1 million years from now? What remains of human civilization would still be around? And would we end up clones in a human version of Jurassic Park? This is What If? And here's what would happen if aliens came to Earth 1 million years in the future. We're living in the Anthropocene epoch, and in this historical period, the human impact on the world around us has been significant enough to geologically alter it. 100 years from now, it could be an era defined by ecological collapse and mass extinction. Big bummer, right? Now, there's no way for us to know how or when our species may take its final walk on our home planet. A team of alien scientists could find evidence of nuclear fallout, climate change, or maybe a massive asteroid that ended our existence. Or maybe they'd even find us already living on another planet. Maybe 1 million years from now, you'd be an alien on board a starship that has just entered into orbit around Earth.
I can't tell if you're joking or not.
But despite your best efforts to scan the planet below for intelligent life, you'd find nothing. Your trip down to the surface would be slightly delayed by an ongoing supervolcanic eruption. The planet would be blanketed in the darkness of ash. You might even have to wait a few years for your alien crew to clean it up before you could even land. Finally, you'd get approval to visit Earth. Down there, you'd find everything to be barren and lifeless. Storms, fires, and earthquakes would have erased nearly all signs of immediately visible life. But your team of archaeologists and paleontologists would know that if they wanted to find evidence of past civilizations, they better start digging. You'd be investigating what are called boundary layers. These are geological signatures that indicate a transition from one period to the next. So you'd be looking for animal and plant fossils, as well as changes in rock layers. You could find a thin layer of clay that marks the boundary to our Anthropocenic era. The top layer would contain not much more than small fossilized remains of a few plant species. The layer below would contain older rock, but not only that, there would be an abundance of diverse plant fossils. This would be a breakthrough for your team, as they'd now confirm there was some form of mass extinction period. As you searched through this layer, the nature of what happened to Earth over the past million years would be revealed. You'd discover an unnatural amount of carbon deposits from fossil fuel emissions, evidence of global temperature changes, and widespread chemical pollutants. But the effects of climate change may have reversed themselves over the 1 million years humans have been absent. If your team were to uncover the regions where our coastal populations used to be, you could excavate the remains of cities relatively well preserved in the sedimentary rock. Imagine discovering the ancient subway tunnels and sewers of New York. But nothing you would find would be in pristine condition. Bricks would have gone from their characteristic red to gray, and steel would have rusted and dissolved, leaving only imprints in the soil. Finally, you'd make the biggest discovery of all: fossilized human bones. Just like the dinosaurs, these too would most likely only be found encased in sedimentary rock. Almost all of the fossils of dinosaurs that we discover today are from species that would have lived near lakes or rivers that flooded. Floods covered their remains in mud and silt very quickly, and this prevented their bones from rotting. The same would apply to Homo sapiens. Your alien team would piece together the puzzle that many of these human fossils were the result of catastrophic floods or tsunamis. Usually, bones take decades to decompose. If buried in a dry environment like a funeral casket, they could last for 100 years. Mummified bones can survive thousands of years. Finding any of these would tell your team that the last humans to walk the Earth weren't all that far in the past. But discovering only fossilized remains would reveal our extinction point being further back than you'd hoped. There wouldn't be any samples of soft tissues like muscles, just rocks that used to be bones. Oh, but you'd probably find fossilized plastic in the layers of sedimentary rock too. It's not yet known how long plastic waste needs to decompose into organic matter. It could take hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Or, as you and your crew could discover, millions. What you'd keep your hopes up for would be the real Holy Grail: human DNA. The oldest DNA samples found in our modern times date back 800,000 years and come from insects and plants. But studies conclude that DNA could take about 7 million years to disintegrate. And eureka! You'd find human DNA samples trapped in ice cores in what was once Greenland. Now, the big question would be, what do you do with them? Study human genetics for scientific purposes, or have a little fun? One idea would be to clone these ancient humans. You could even create some kind of Jurassic Park filled with people, except it would be called Anthropocene Park. And based on all that you'd put together about our tragic history, there would be so many entertaining things to do in this amusement park. Maybe you could clone other animals and play a game of mass extinction. The winner would be the one who could kill the most species in the shortest amount of time. You could dig for hidden oil reserves, increase carbon emissions for fun to watch icebergs melt. Or how about a game of nuclear war? Sadly though, you and the other scientists probably wouldn't be able to figure out what life was like for humans at the end of our civilization. Billions of years ago, another planet smashed into Earth. An event of this epicness could have created our moon. It also could have brought alien life to our planet. What evidence of this planet still exists on Earth today? Could there be life deep inside the Earth's surface? And could that life be an advanced civilization of humanoid aliens? This is What If, and here's what would happen if aliens are living inside the Earth. 4.5 billion years ago, Theia, a protoplanet the size of Mars, struck our young Earth. This collision scattered pieces of both planets into space, and many scientists argue that these pieces eventually coalesced into our moon. But what happened to the rest of Theia is still a mystery. The existence of blobs of material inside Earth's mantle, known as low shear velocity provinces, could be evidence that parts of Theia fused with Earth. These chunks are up to 1,000 kilometers in height and several times that in width. They sit below Africa and the Pacific Ocean, straddling Earth's core like a pair of headphones. But other theories, some dating back centuries, suggest a completely different explanation of what exists under the surface. A lush tropical paradise for aliens. The Earth consists of 4 layers: the crust, the mantle, and the outer and inner core. But there hasn't been any successful exploration below the crust, so there's much we don't know about the realities below the surface. This has led to spectacular speculation like the hollow Earth theory. According to this theory, our planet could be a series of nested spheres centered around a central core. In between these shells, atmospheres could exist that are capable of supporting life. In the 17th century, Edmund Halley, the scientist who discovered Halley's Comet, backed this theory. Many others have added to it, suggesting a small sun could be hanging in the center of the Earth, and plants, animals, and humans could be living there. And not just humans, but a race of superhumans. Immortals who possess sophisticated technology to build hundreds of subterranean cities. But if there were aliens inside the Earth, what would the conditions for life be? Could the inside of our planet be a luscious paradise? Or a hot, hellish dump? If you were to visit one of the low shear velocity provinces, you'd have to go 2,900 kilometers below the surface. Here, you'd be surrounded by magma or liquid rock, with temperatures as high as 3,700 degrees Celsius. And the weight of the crust and mantle above you would increase the pressure to over 237,000 times the atmospheric pressure, on the surface of the Earth. Whatever life you find here would need to exist in these extreme conditions. And these life forms would need to evolve to extract oxygen directly from the magma, or live without it. They'd need to survive without any sunlight. Radiation would be the primary energy source. And lucky for them, the radioactive decay of uranium, thorium, and potassium in the Earth's crust and mantle already account for the primary source of heat in the Earth's interior. There could be all kinds of undiscovered creatures down there, but until you could withstand the pressure and heat to find out, we'll never know. And as for the hollow Earth, well, it's nice to imagine a paradise world underneath our feet instead of layers upon layers of hot, molten rock.
Is intelligent life out there in the universe? Well, with scientists discovering new exoplanets every year,
yeah, the possibility only grows stronger. Will we discover alien life in the future? Or will they discover us? In this episode, we take a look at the multiple possibilities that could happen if aliens are out there, from what they might look like to the incredible technology they might control. Let's start with a scenario where aliens come to invade our home. Day 1. The aliens have officially invaded Earth, and they're not here to make friends. Many scientists theorize that if alien life showed up on Earth, it'd be because they want something from us. Space travel, as we know it, is incredibly expensive and time-consuming, so if an alien race traveled to planet Earth, they wouldn't be doing it to shake hands and have a chat over coffee. They'd probably be here to mine precious resources that they don't have in their galaxy. Or they might be coming to perform experiments on us and learn more about the human race. On a cultural level, the discovery of alien life could change everything. Humans would question what they know about religion, culture, and philosophy. The good news is that one of humanity's biggest questions would finally be answered. Yes, aliens are real. But what happens when they invade us? Well, we're not sure totally what their intentions are just yet. This is only day 1. Over the course of this video, we'll keep checking in and seeing where this alien invasion could go. But before we get to our full-on alien invasion, what would these extraterrestrials look like? Well, there are a ton of different theories, from simple microorganisms to intelligent life that could take over entire galaxies. In this scenario, we have a couple of options scientists have theorized we might possibly discover one day. Let's explore, starting with the simple and getting increasingly weird. This is Subject 004, and it looks oddly familiar. This is bacteria found on Earth. Wait, what? I thought we were talking about aliens. Well, some scientists theorize that life found on Earth might be extraterrestrial. Earth was hit with thousands of meteors 4 billion years ago, and attached to these meteors may have been tiny bits of bacteria that were the building blocks for the life we have on Earth. Next is Subject 021. This alien looks a lot like us for some reason. Boring, yeah, I know, but some scientists think it could exist. We're discovering more and more exoplanets similar to Earth every year, and the only intelligent life that we're confident that exists in the universe is us. So if you have a planet that's similar to Earth with similar conditions, well, it makes sense that life on that exoplanet could have evolved similar to humans. But aliens might not be organic at all. What if aliens are artificial intelligence? Introducing Subject 042. This is an extraterrestrial being that happens to be a highly intelligent robot. Hey, what do advanced societies, space colonies, and interstellar travel all have in common, other than them all being featured in sci-fi movies? Well, they all take highly intelligent minds and a ton of hard work to pull off. And what better way to accomplish this than to put a bunch of hard-working, highly intelligent robots on it? Ones that never get tired and keep learning at an advanced rate. Artificially intelligent aliens are a possibility for a few reasons. First, they wouldn't be limited to the pesky limitations that we organic life forms might have. AI wouldn't have to worry about oxygen, food, sleeping, or anything else that might get in the way of building a galactic empire. They also wouldn't need to worry about building on a planet with an atmosphere. They could bypass the need to breathe, as well as any safety concerns. They could expand to planets that we weakling humans might not even dream suitable for life. If the AI doesn't need to worry about things like their planet being in the Goldilocks zone, well, theoretically they could populate any celestial body they want. But this also assumes that the AI would have the same epic desires as humans. Who knows how they would want to spend their time? They may hibernate for billions of years and wait for certain stars to explode. They might just want to keep to themselves and not make a massive impact on the galaxy or interact with other species. Okay, the final alien we're theorizing about is Subject 339. This one looks a little bit more unusual than what we're used to because it's composed of silicone instead of carbon. The checkboxes for life that silicone needs completely differs from what we're used to. On a molecular level,
This type of life is much more unstable than carbon, but it can also live at extremely low temperatures and high atmospheric pressures. It could also look quite different from other life forms. These aliens might appear to be rock-like or be crystallized in some form. But regardless of what they look like, they'd be bizarre. Okay, now let's go back to Earth and check in on our alien invasion. Day 30. The aliens have come equipped with several advanced pieces of tech. Using wormhole technology, they've been able to move across the universe in seconds. Earth is now full of floating megastructures, far beyond our current technological capabilities. Over the last 30 days, the aliens have been slowly and methodically taking over parts of the world, attacking our infrastructure, governments, and cities, all in hopes of taking over our planet and mining our resources. Our most powerful militaries have been working together to counterattack the invading aliens, using our most advanced technologies in hopes of fighting them off. Up in the sky, more alien megastructures appear. Massive structures are being assembled that can mine and terraform our planet with ease. Now, before all this happened, scientists had been working for decades in hopes of finding alien life. Let's take a look back to figure out how we got here. There have been hundreds, if not thousands, of fake alien reports and sightings, from people saying UFOs are in their backyard to fake alien corpses being presented as real. One of the most notable events happened in late 2023. Self-described UFO expert Jaime Mawson showed what looked to be 2 alien specimens to the Mexican Congress. The corpses were shriveled up gray bodies with 3 fingers. Mawson claimed they were non-human, but experts quickly debunked these claims. Mawson showed up with spotty evidence, and it was revealed that the specimens were human, but may have been manipulated to look extraterrestrial. Another claim of alien life in 2023 was made by a former United States military intelligence officer. He said that the US government was in possession of some sort of UFO and a non-human pilot. However, NASA and government officials have since refuted the claims and said there was no evidence to back it up. Now, we can go back and forth on what's real and what's fake in these claims, but it's safe to say that there's no real and significant evidence that intelligent life is out there. At least not yet. But scientists are working hard to find some. One of the most likely methods of finding alien life is through the James Webb Telescope. Since 2021, this super telescope has been trying to find exoplanets across our galaxy. It has the ability to analyze the composition of the atmospheres on the exoplanets. It looks for things like oxygen, carbon dioxide, and methane, and if it happens to find these, that could be a good sign for potential alien life. Another option is a bit closer to home, in our own solar system. Scientists have been looking at Mars, as well as one of the moons of Jupiter, Europa, in hopes of finding life. This life would most likely appear in microbacterial form. Now, if we want to find more intelligent alien life, we could go the SETI route. The Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence is a group of over 100 scientists who've been searching the universe for decades. They're using AI to scan the cosmos in hopes of finding out what's out there. Since 1960, SETI has been scanning the skies for radio signals that are different from the cosmic background noise. If they find something that isn't naturally occurring, well, it could indicate that it might be from an advanced civilization. But in our invasion scenario, we weren't the ones discovering the aliens. These aliens discovered us. Day 100. In the past 100 days, a full-on alien war has broken out. Militaries and even civilian fighters are battling this alien species, but no matter what we do, it's nearly impossible to stop them. Remember, these extraterrestrials were able to travel from a different galaxy to reach Earth, meaning they're highly intelligent and have some seriously advanced tech. They can terraform or wipe out entire cities with the push of a button. The one advantage humans might have in this case is our sheer number of troops that we could assemble. Since we're on our home turf, we'd have all 8 billion people to help fight back. We'd assume that this alien species likely traveled incredibly far and with less than 8 billion people, so we could beat them when it came to a sheer numbers game. But again, they have technology so advanced that we might not be capable of fighting back at all. Our best bet might be to retreat, go into hiding, and avoid the aliens as much as we can. Okay, we'll check back in on the alien invasion in a minute, but as we've been going through this scenario, I've been wondering, why haven't we found any aliens yet? With billions of stars and habitable planets, it seems that the probability of us finding intelligent life out there should be pretty high. Well, this is where the Fermi paradox comes in. Developed by physicist Enrico Fermi, this paradox is about the idea that there's a high probability of extraterrestrial life out there. Well, then why haven't we found any? The Milky Way alone has billions of stars similar to our Sun, each of which could have many habitable planets. There's also billions of galaxies out there that are much older than ours. So if intelligent life, or any life at all, is common in outer space, well, there should be some that are more advanced than ours. In theory, they'd be able to travel across the universe and visit us on Earth. But we've yet to find any concrete proof of alien life existing. So why? Well, one of the leading explanations is called the Great Filter Theory. This idea proposes a stage in civilization's development that's incredibly difficult for life to overcome. This stage could be several things, from civilizations needing to overcome all-out wars to being able to reach great technological heights. Now, if the civilization does pass this filter, then it could be an interstellar civilization. But the problem is, we haven't seen or don't know of any civilization that's managed to pass it yet, leading us to think that there's something in the development of civilizations that prevents them from becoming an interstellar species. This could be war or famine or some sort of catastrophic destruction. Regardless of what it exactly is, it seems civilizations may be unable to cross this threshold, and now that brings us back to our alien invasion scenario. Day 300. What makes this alien species so terrifying is the fact that they've been able to cross the Great Filter. It's possible these aliens would have come from a highly advanced civilization, much older and much more experienced than ours. They've been through all sorts of potential extinction events, but have somehow managed to survive and become more advanced. And now they've been attacking and conquering Earth for nearly a year. Humans have done all they could, but with a society this advanced, it would be nearly impossible to win this fight. The aliens have been building more megastructures and mining more of our resources. Eventually, they'd take all they need from our planet and move on, potentially leaving humanity to live in a barren wasteland. But an alien encounter doesn't always need to end with a full-on invasion. The aliens could potentially be similar to humans. Maybe they're simply looking to explore and find new life forms. Maybe we could be a society that they simply want to observe and watch. And this is where the galactic zoo theory comes in. This theory proposes that extraterrestrials are so advanced that they want nothing to do with us, at least directly. They may see Earth and our solar system as a giant enclosed zoo, one that's full of different species for them to watch and observe. Think of the way we humans might think about ants. They're fun to watch and study in their colonies for short periods of time, but we'd never want to directly interact with them. We look at them as beneath us in terms of intelligence and what they have to offer. So that's how aliens might look at humanity. And knowing what an alien invasion could look like, well, I think I'd prefer it if the aliens sat and watched, as long as they remembered to like and subscribe. Now, this is what would happen if the aliens decided to find us, but what if we went out to find the aliens on Jupiter's moon? Well, that sounds like a story for another What If.
It's no secret that humans are the Earth's most dominant species. And without proof of life anywhere else in the universe, we can probably consider ourselves the most dominant species in space, too.